Last year, during the Hispanic Leadership Summit, we were able to highlight a couple of incredible stories as Hispanic stars. Whether it was the twins that were handicapped and their resilience to actually survive and not let anybody tell them that they were not going to have a PhD, or whether it was a girl that was able to come to the States on the back of a truck and was able to be working now as a software engineer. We were hearing about the resilience and the incredible sacrifice that our community has made to get us to where we are right now, ready to shine. It's now my pleasure to introduce one of the absolute Hispanic stars of all of Hispanic stars. His name is Antonio Lucio. He's been a brilliant luminary on marketing all across, one of the brightest minds in branding. He's been able to lead marketing and communications for organizations like HP and Facebook, and now he's devoted himself to lead diversity and inclusion, pushing Hispanic agenda. Antonio.
Hi, my name is Antonio Lucio. I'm the former CMO of PepsiCo International, Visa, HP, and most recently, Facebook. Most of our companies are concerned with driving growth, particularly after this very challenging pandemic. If we want growth, we have to cater our products to the communities that we serve, to the communities that are growing within the context of our economy. We also need to make sure that our teams represent those same communities that we serve. If that's what we want, if that's what we need to make sure that we have a significantly enhanced focus on Hispanic products, on Hispanic consumers, and on Hispanics in terms of the representation of our senior teams. It is a huge market. It is a huge growing market that is driving the total US economy. It is not just the future, but the present of the new generations. It is the new minority, or the majority, if you will. As we look into the future, it's really important that we have specific efforts, marketing efforts to cater to our consumers, and importantly, that we have specific efforts so that we can begin to develop the next generation of leadership. One thing that we can all do is to actually begin to leverage the Hispanic star. It is a representation of companies that cater and importantly value the Hispanic consumers. So as we move into 2021, let's make sure that we bring the Hispanics to the position that they deserve within the country and importantly within our corporations. Thank you very much.
Good morning. It's such a pleasure to be here. I want to thank Claudia, Steve, Michelle, and the entire World Human team for the invitation. I'm delighted to be joined by two admired colleagues. First, Rishad Tobaccowala and Rodrigo Fernández del Castillo. Two people that I really admire, and we're here to talk about a creative perspective on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and multicultural marketing. Rishad, if you don't mind, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you again for having me. I'm Rishad Tobaccowala. I am an author of a book called Restoring the Soul of Business, Staying Human in the Age of Data. I am also a speaker and teacher, as well as an advisor. One of the companies I advise is the Publicis Groupe, where I spent my 38-year career, most recently being on the board, as well as being its chief strategist and chief growth officer.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us. It's really a pleasure. Rodrigo Fernández, in full disclosure, my client, my friend, and my colleague. Welcome, Rodrigo.
Thank you, Luis Miguel. Very happy to be here among these two industry icons. Again, Rodrigo Fernández del Castillo. I lead Hispanic Consumer Insights at PepsiCo Beverage North America. My role here is really to inform and inspire all communications and Hispanic initiatives, as well as the brands across the board. Just in terms of career, before PepsiCo, I spent a good amount of time working on consumer insights international, primarily Latin America, and then for the last about 11 years or so, fully concentrated on the U.S. Hispanic market.
Great. And just to complement, I'm Luis Miguel Messianu. I'm the founder, creative chairman, and CEO of Alma here in Miami. And I'm very keen on the two themes that we're going to touch upon: diversity, equity, and inclusion, and of course, multicultural marketing. The last few months, the conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion has become the flavor of the month in corporate America. And of course, this is great news. The not so great news is that for some corporations, DE&I might be implemented in lieu of multicultural marketing programs, at least from a resource allocation perspective. Let me say that both concepts are equally important, and they might even be related, but the risk of treating them as the same may end up damaging a brand's bottom line. Today, more than ever, a committed DE&I program is a must for corporations to build an organization that better reflects the society and the marketplace. Diversity helps bring the right representation. Equity is the recognition of everyone's value in their difference, and inclusion is a must in order to have these voices heard at the decision-making level. Actually, one of the most compelling arguments for diversity, equity, and inclusion from a business standpoint is innovation. Just as biological diversity leads to evolution, in fact, it's key to ensuring the future of humanity, diverse perspectives in the workplace lead to business innovation. Diversity is good business, and clients reap the benefits of the rich currency of insights and freshness. And interesting ideas come from interesting people. It's as simple and complex as that. As someone that has recently written about this topic with deep insight and a fresh perspective, I'm really delighted to have Rishad. And in a recent blog, he wrote the following, and I quote, "Diversity is critical. Human life endures and evolves due to the intertwining of different gene pools. Innovation happens with fresh, insightful connections between cultures, expertise, and backgrounds." Rishad, as someone who has spent many years in the communication business and in your current role as a consultant, frequent speaker, and writer, and also a professor, can you tell us about the value and benefits of diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Absolutely. So building on what you have said, which I completely agree with, and the quote that you basically read, diversity has three things that are extremely critical. The first is it is the right thing to do. And today, in a world where companies rightfully talk about purpose and values and meaning, if you do not have a diverse, inclusive, and equal or equality-driven workforce, then every purpose and mission and vision statement that you speak makes no sense at all. Which is, if you cannot look after your own company's employees and your own company's collaborators, suppliers, then in effect, you are just using empty words. That's number one. Number two is it is intensely good for innovation in three ways. It is good for innovation because when you have people from different cultures and perspectives working together, you get fresh, insightful ideas. Second, it's very good for innovation in that you begin to understand the marketplace, because the marketplace outside, including in the United States, is increasingly diverse. As I remind people, sometime in the next year, the United States will become Caucasian minority, or rather what I like to call truly multi-ethnic, under 21 years of age. So in effect, you're sort of reflecting that. But third, if those two weren't important enough, which is it's the right thing to do for purpose and values, and it's great for innovation and understanding the market, it is amazing for business, which is it basically companies that invest in these not only do better in the marketplace, not only do better attracting talent, but their stock price goes up, if that's one way of metrics. So I truly believe that companies who are not inclusive, who do not look out both from a multicultural and DEI perspective, are businesses that are slowly strangling themselves.
That's awesome, Rishad. You make very compelling arguments, and I wholeheartedly agree. And I take this opportunity to thank you for everything you're doing for the industry. We have heard you at different conferences, and I'm a fan and a constant reader of your blog, which, by the way, it gets published every Sunday, and it's free. I'm sure Rishad will remind us where to go, but I love your perspective, and I think you really bring a lot to the party. I have an important caveat to make. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is definitely not the same as multicultural marketing. An effective DEI program can serve as a springboard for an inclusive approach across all stakeholders, including not only employees, but also suppliers, retailers, and consumers. And precisely because retailers and consumers should be engaged in this effort, the multicultural marketing discipline and its specialized expertise is required. DEI efforts are not truly complete without a multicultural marketing strategy, and multicultural marketing strategies may be incomplete and ineffective if developed without people who understand and engage with the new demographic and psychographic paradigm of America, especially as 2020, in more ways than one, will be a turning point for our nation. And Rishad referred to how this country will become a minority majority as early as next year. DEI can be seen as an internal effort to which a corporation commits to encourage a work environment that inspires diversity of representation and thought, promotes and celebrates inclusivity, and provides equitable opportunities to all. Meanwhile, multicultural marketing is an external effort for a corporation to promote and sell products or services, including market research, and hence the presence of my good friend Rodrigo, and advertising to one or more audiences of a specific cultural segment. There's now proof that DEI is a source of enormous benefit for organizations, as differences in background, experiences, and thinking lead to increased innovation and insight. However, these innovations and insights need to be communicated to multicultural consumers in a relevant and authentic way. And that is only possible by having a proper multicultural marketing strategy, or in other words, a DEI program is always welcome for a corporation to create an inclusive working environment, but a multicultural strategy is imperative for a business to grow. Another way of looking at it is that DEI is about values and multicultural marketing is about driving value. To talk about the value of multicultural marketing, I'm really happy to have Rodrigo here with us. Would you be so kind to share a perspective on how Pepsi has approached this topic? Rodrigo, I know that PepsiCo has been on a great trajectory, and I'm very honored to have been part of it.
Thank you, Luis Miguel, and thank you for your points. I completely agree with everything that Rishad and you had talked about. Now, getting into our journey within multicultural marketing, and more specifically Hispanic marketing, the turning point for Pepsi was really the business case. It's a 60 million Hispanic population that is critical to the growth, not only for beverage, but for pretty much any consumer category. So just for non-alcoholic beverages, Hispanics are going to account for 40% of the growth in the next 5 years. So that's massive, right? And however, our communications were not connecting emotionally with Hispanics. Our relevance and preference have been softening with this target. So in order to really reverse these trends, Pepsi needed a dedicated approach, like what you mentioned, something to really be able to hone into the market and then really create this love and become really culturally relevant again. So PepsiCo created a cross-functional team, and it is pretty much the Hispanic business unit. This is not a center of excellence or a two-person marketing team trying to influence internally. This is a full-on business unit that has marketing, insights, sales, just all the functions, and has full support from the leadership all the way to the front line. So with this, the company really showed the commitment to this segment, and we set ourselves a big and bold vision to become the best loved food and beverage company among U.S. Hispanics. But it isn't easy to become relevant, right? I mean, especially on the Hispanic market, we know that it has evolved. We know that it's complex. We know that Hispanics today are not the same that they were in the 80s or in the 70s, where people were really trying to assimilate. They were like parents were not teaching Spanish to their kids. This has really evolved, like the massive growth of the population, the influence of the internet, the influence that Hispanic culture has had in pop culture, in music, and in other areas of society has been massive. So looking at traditional ways in which the Hispanic segment was looked at before, like traditional acculturation segments or just language preference or time in country, was not relevant enough to really to go deep and really connect emotionally with Hispanics. So that's when we partnered with you, Luis Miguel and Alma, and really implemented what we call the cultural identity segmentation, which pretty much looks at Hispanics by the level of affinity that they have with their culture of origin, from whatever country they are coming from, Latin America, and also the level of affinity with the American culture. And one of these segments is what we call the fusionistas, which is these Hispanics who live fully immersed in their Latin culture and fully immersed 100% as well on the American culture. So they are 100% Latin Americans, 100% Americans. And because of this evolution that I just mentioned, they are unapologetic about it. They really have the confidence to embrace who they are and their Latin identity. Another great aspect is that they really reflect the spirit of the Pepsi brand. They are those who are shaping culture, and again, they are unapologetic about it. So this is what we select as our target for the Pepsi brand. Let me show you a video that kind of better articulates this segment. So as you can see, very interesting segment, and we use this target really to inspire all of the work that we've been doing with Hispanics across the board. Like we started with a partnership that we did with John Leguizamo, who is a character that really much embodies this progress forward, unapologetic spirit. And we run a full campaign with him. And then we also went deeper and leveraged a lot of the Hispanic passion points with soccer, with a partnership that we have with the UEFA Champions League, and then with a series of live music concerts.
Yeah, John here.
Te necesitamos en el teatro.
Upa!
El mundo del espectáculo no es para ti.
Oh, sorry.
Tu apellido no va con Hollywood.
Ponte metas realistas.
Sorry, excuse me.
Necesitas material más fresco.
Your talent is not enough.
That accent is so difficult to understand.
I got this.
You need to stand out.
Busca un trabajo de verdad.
No tienes la imagen que estamos buscando.
¿Eres gracioso?
¿Por qué
Hazme reír.
escoges esta carrera?
Tienes que jugar. Hacer comedia no es fácil.
Presentamos.
That's right, here we go, people, here we go.
Leguizamo.
Look how far we've come, huh? Go for your dream. Don't settle for anything. Don't ever settle. You know, it doesn't matter. You aim for the stars, and wherever you land, that's gonna be fine. But just aim high.
And the results have been very clear. I mean, we've seen how our brand affinity and relevance has gone up, and it also has resulted in positive sales as well. We know that there is a long way to go to achieve our vision, but we're definitely moving forward in that direction.
That's awesome, Rodrigo. And again, it's been an honor and a privilege to be part of this journey. I can attest that the commitment starts very much at the top, and the entire brand team, starting with the CMO Greg Lyons, the brand director Todd Kaplan, JP Bittencourt, who's the main person on the brand, and then of course Rodrigo and Esperanza Tisdale, who heads up the HBU, and before that Marisa Solis. Everybody is really on the same page and pushing hard. And as Rodrigo says, the results are there. While we cannot, spill the beans and tell you the specific numbers, we can say that it's been several months, almost a year of continuous growth. And, Pepsi, by recommitting to multicultural and specifically to the Hispanic market, is reaping the benefits and seeing the results. I think both videos make the point. The first one in terms of who we're talking to, and then we're very proud of the John Leguizamo case study. It has won several recognitions, and we have done different things. More recently, we worked together on a very interesting effort, very relevant to this audience in terms of voter registration. It was called Unmute Your Voice, and Rodrigo was instrumental in making it happen. As I mentioned, we're currently researching the next generation of work, and the commitment is there, the results are there, and again, I think Pepsi is a great example of both things, DE&I, and you see it reflected on the business case and the business unit, but also a formal and very well thought out multicultural program. Rishad, let me get back to you. In your experience, who's doing it right? Are there any examples of companies or brands that are really committing to this and have become the gold standard?
So the company that I believe that we should also pay a lot of attention to is Microsoft. And the reason basically is because Microsoft has understood that in order to do this, they need to combine everything from incentives. So they are basically changing the way that everybody gets compensated using diversity, inclusion, and equality as part of it. They are making sure that they use the heft of their spending to pressurize or to guide all their suppliers and outside vendors. They have made numerical commitments on the number of leaders that they will have, including on the board, within 5 years, that they will be measured against. At the very same time, they're basically creating a spirit where everyone can also speak up. Because one of the important things that I have noted is diversity of faces is a necessary step, but it is not the same as diversity of voices. That you could potentially basically have people with the right mix and the right proportions of everything, but if their voice is not heard, if they don't feel comfortable speaking up and they're not listened to, then we haven't done enough.
Such a strong point, Rishad. I think the advertising industry is a good example. It's a little bit curious that being in charge of innovation, it took such a long time, to our industry to catch up, and we're seeing it. The last few years, of course, 2020 is a turning point, but the last, I would say, 5 or 10 years, the whole industry has tried to become more diverse. And unfortunately, it has become kind of a check, one of each, but let's put them in the back room. And in many cases, they don't have a voice. And to your point, that's why I think we have evolved. And now we talk about the 3 components of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's important that it's not just the color of our skin or our faces. It's about the diversity of points of view.
Yes.
I think that is a very strong message to our audience. This is totally actionable, and it's very relevant in terms of the context of this conference, which is about changing perceptions. And I think if we really want to commit to DEI and multicultural marketing, we need to make sure that it's not just a matter of color, it's a matter of tone, it's a matter of voice. And I think going back to Rodrigo and PepsiCo, you guys are a great example of a turning point by fulfilling both sides of the equation. I don't know, Rodrigo, if you have more ammunition to make these points.
Sure. I mean, in terms of just going back to diversity and supporting the community, I mean, I'm very, very proud to say that PepsiCo has done a great commitment, a very bold commitment to support the community in people, businesses, and just the community itself. Not too long ago, a few weeks ago, our CEO, Ramon Laguarta, announced that he's going to invest over the next 5 years, $170 million to support the Hispanic community. Everything from people internally, again, businesses, Hispanic businesses, and then communities. So I think it's a great example of something that the company is doing. Very proud of that.
I'm a witness, and what I can say, and I think Rishad touched upon this, is that as the world keeps becoming more diverse, if brands want to see the growth, and I think every brand does, most of that growth will come from multicultural, from diverse consumers. So in the words of Mark Pritchard from P&G, if you're not doing multicultural marketing, you're not doing marketing at all. I think you cannot say as a company or as a brand that you're fully committed if you don't have an understanding. And I agree with you, Rishad. I think Microsoft is a great example, PepsiCo, of course, but P&G has done a tremendous job of addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion, and of course, as the largest advertiser in the world, it's a prime example of how to do it right.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you.
No, I completely agree. And then more and more companies, P&G, obviously Pepsi, but because Rodrigo was here, I didn't want to embarrass him. But there are Pepsi's a leader, P&G's a leader, Microsoft's a leader, and more companies are. And one of the key reasons is also this fact that under 21 years old, next year will become truly multicultural, which is a lot of the young people are putting pressure on senior people inside organizations, including boards. And it's one of the things that I've recently written about, which is there is 2 additional kinds of diversity we need to pay attention to. One is the diversity which of voices, which I've mentioned, but the other one is the diversity of ages. And the United States is in a very unusual place right now. It is because of a slowdown in immigration and immigrants not having as many kids as they had before, that for the first time, its population is starting to slow down its growth. It's not declining, but it's slowing down its growth. And if you look at many countries, Spain, Italy, Japan, or even China with its one-child policy, their populations are actually declining, right? And so, to a great extent, one thing that is happening in the US is the US is also getting older because of that. And every day, 10,000 people are turning 65 in the US. And because of, if you have good healthcare, at 65, you're likely to have a good life for at least 15 years more before you start getting ill. And so companies have to recognize that the older people are going to be around for quite a while, and they control most of America's wealth, right? And we don't pay enough attention. The second is to young people. Which are, whether it's the millennials, etc. The reason we have to pay attention to them is look what happened when the Black Lives Matter march happened, right? The people who were walking, including if you heard from, Obama, he basically said, I was so surprised because in the past, whenever we had, African-American or Black Lives type of marches, it used to primarily be African-Americans and Blacks. And this time it was truly, truly multi-ethnic. And you also noticed it was particularly young. And we have to pay attention to those folks too. And so often I ask companies, why don't you have younger generation of people in your board? Why do you just have shadow boards? Why don't you have real boards with their voices? Because the way they are growing up, their beliefs, their meanings, their purpose, the way they utilize media is so different that we have to listen to them.
Great points, Rishad. And we keep learning. I think this is a work in progress. I can tell you that at least at Alma, we have a wide range. We have 32 nationalities, and I'm one of the oldest, but we have people from all different age groups, sexual preferences. I think. In my experience, having a mix of ages, a mix of races, a mix of voices, and making sure that everybody has a chance at bat makes a huge difference. And let me close, first of all, by thanking you both for your participation. Rodrigo, you want to say something?
I just wanted to say something that just to give one thought, that there's also, we can't see all these segments as separate entities completely. There's a lot of intersectionality. There's a lot of Black Latinos. There's a lot of these diverse segments are diverse, but are mixed within them as well. So that is also something important, just something to consider.
I'm in the process of writing an article that touches precisely on that. I think the Hispanic representation and this mix will really have an impact in the overall industry. And the metaphor I'm using is the mole, which is Enrique Olvera from Pujol's restaurant. How mole is a sauce that contains so many different things. And he has he calls it madre mole. It's a mole that he has been consistently overlapping with new ingredients. And I think that is how culture works. That is how diversity adds flavor and color to this world and this industry. And again, just to close, thank you to Claudia, to Steve, to Michelle, to Marisa, to the entire World Human team for getting us together, for addressing the change of perception that is so much needed. And thank you, Rishad and Rodrigo, for your time, for your insight, and your valuable points of view. A pleasure to spend time with you, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Absolutely, and thank you, everybody. And if you want to continue a conversation, it's rishad.substack.com. That's the newsletter that I send out every week. The most recent one was about a river of change, which I think is interesting. So that's rishad.substack.com. Thank you.
Thank you,
Rodrigo.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Happy to be here.
Hello everyone, my name's Philip Thomas. I'm the chairman of Cannes Lions, and thank you very much for having me here to say a few words. It was only a few years ago that we launched the SDG Lions at Cannes Lions in conjunction with the United Nations. And it was a Hispanic woman who brought us that idea and effectively made it happen, the legendary Claudia Edelman. It was Claudia who helped us to hone the whole thing. And now it's one of the most exciting and sought after Lions that we have. We have 17 categories in the SDGs, as you can imagine, one for every goal, of course. And all of the money that we make from the entries, the entry costs into the awards, is given to the winning Grand Prix idea. So we've managed to fund to the tune of several $1 million ideas like the Palau Pledge, which some of you might remember, and also the Lion's Share, which was about using animals in advertising. So what we do with the SDG Lions is we ask the international community to use their creative power to help the world become a better place. And there are 60 million Hispanics in the United States, and they are so creative. When we see what happened at Cannes over the last few years, we see the Hispanic community winning more and more Lions and entering more and more and showing the world how to tell those stories. The Hispanic community has so much power and is so important as a community. It represents growth, it represents youth, it represents excitement and creativity. And I suppose it also represents diversity and inclusion. Because when we look across the world right now, certainly the brands that I talk to and the companies that I talk to are putting diversity and inclusion right at the very heart of what they do. And the reason for that is that they've understood that minorities add so much value, and including people adds so much value to their offering. And certainly in the creative space, having inclusive environments where people can really turn up as themselves, we know from our data, from our factual data, that better creativity comes of that. It's especially important now, I think, in this COVID world that we're living in, because COVID has had a disproportionate impact on Hispanic and Black people in the USA. In fact, of course, it's had a disproportionate impact on Hispanic and Black women especially. So this is something that is truly at the heart of how we grow out of our current crisis, but also how we grow as a community and grow as businesses. And I congratulate everybody on the efforts of the Hispanic Star, because diversity and inclusion truly matters. But creativity is mainly about authenticity, and it's about storytelling. So I urge you to follow the example of those wonderful storytellers at Cannes Lions from the Hispanic community who've started to tell the authentic stories of the Hispanic community in the USA. Because the more authentic and the more real the stories are, the more embedded in true lived experience, the better the creativity is. And we've seen that time and time again. So help us to raise the profile of the Hispanic community, and let's all have an impact together through creativity. Thank you all very much.